Hello guys, welcome to our learning channel. So today we are going to have another exciting video uh, with the same topic continued in logistic regression. So in the last video it was a part 1 of logistic regression wherein we have seen the conceptual understanding of how and when logistic regression can be applied, the algorithm can be applied. We have seen one small example through slides for simple logistic regression. Simple meaning whenever we have one input variable and one output variable, we call it as a simple regression. So that example we have seen in the last session. And today we are going to create a part 2 of it, wherein we are going to understand what if we have multiple input variables and with of course one output variable. So with a brief recap of the last part, I'm going to continue today's session wherein a practical understanding by using R tool we are going to see a case study in real life. And so before beginning with the session, those who are attending this channel for the first time, watching me or my videos for the first time, this is my brief introduction on your screen. My name is Pranav Gandhi. I work as a trainer and consultant in data science and machine learning. My total industry experience is 22 years. These are the various domains in which I have worked in these last 22 years. I worked in software product development, healthcare industry, plastic product manufacturing, automobile trading industry, insurance and banking, telecommunication, e-wallet development, and currently I am working as a trainer and consultant in data science with Python and R languages. These are some of the certifications, academics and credentials which I have. And at the bottom you can see these are all different mediums through which you can get in touch with me, communicate with me. And there is good news for the guys that a new batch is starting on 5th of November, that is the next Saturday. We are starting a new batch, new learning batch for data science with machine learning. So let's begin with today's session, which is a continued session for logistic regression analysis in data science. This is going to be the part 2 of it. So in the last session we have seen what is logistic regression, and we have understood that whenever we have two categories in the output variable, or whatever the predictions I want to do, those predictions can only possibly have two values. Okay, that is a binary or discrete in two categories as an output variable. Whenever we have such a situation in our business problem, we go ahead with logistic regression. I have explained all this in the part 1 video. So these are the various methods through which we can apply logistic regression. So we can have binary logistic regression, nominal logistic regression, ordinal logistic regression. So as I said, that the basic definition of logistic regression, which is commonly used and vastly used or widely used, is binary logistic regression. So we are going to see that in detail when there are only two possible classes or two categories in the output variable. When we have more than two categories, we can either go for nominal logistic regression or ordinal logistic regression, but then there are some conditions attached to it. If the output variable is having nominal variable or nominal categories, then we will go for nominal or nominal logistic regression. And if it is having a natural order to it, right? So we can either have nominal variable wherein there is no natural order to it. Okay, we have seen that in detail in last session. And when it comes to ordinal, the ordinal response variable is always have a natural ordering to it, right? The differences you can see in the part 1 video. Now in binary logistic regression or any logistic regression, there are two types. One is simple, one is multiple. Simple means I have just explained that when I have one input variable, I call it as simple logistic regression. When I have multiple input variables, I call it as multiple logistic regression. How logistic regression works? It actually models, the model of logistic regression predicts and gives me the probability. This is very important word. Probability associated with each dependent variable category. Dependent means y variable, right? So my predictions, my output variable, y variable, when it gives, when I have to predict y, then logistic regression always gives me the probability associated with it, okay? And then we have to classify it the way we have associated either 0 or 1 to my output variable category. So this is how it works. It first find out a linear relationship between independent variable, that is input variable, and then when we get the y value, because my model seems to look like this, y is equal to beta naught. So linear regression model, we all know, beta naught plus beta 1, x1 plus beta 2, x2, and so on, right? So when I have such a model, then what I will get? I'll get a value of y. Then this value of y will be associated with a link function internally by our algorithm, okay? So it will be associated with a link function. That link function gives me the probability. So to get that probability, the link function is p equal to e to the power y divided by 1 plus e to the power y, right? So whenever I get this y value, it will be replaced over here. E is having a constant value and it gives me the probability. Now this probability which I get, this probability is associated with the dependent variable category. But this probability is always associated with class 1. This is again a very important point. So this probability which I get as an output is always associated with class 1. So when I plot all these probabilities, I will get a logistic regression curve, which is also called as sigmoid curve. Which essentially gives me either 0 or 1 as an output. So all the probabilities lying between this 0 and 1 will be then converted or associated either to 1 or 0 based on the cutoff value. So if my cutoff value is 0.5, then anything above 0.5 as a probability will be associated with class 1, and anything below 0.5 as a probability will be associated with class 0. This we have seen yesterday. And multiple logistic regression model, yes, of course it look like multiple linear regression model. This is the model which I have just written, right? And then what we get is, we get the y value which is then replaced internally by the algorithm to give me the probability into this function, where e is nothing but a natural logarithm constant, a number constant 2.7183, and my y is the response value which I have got over here, right, which has been replaced over here to get the probabilities. Once we get those probabilities, then we assign it either to 0 or either to 1 class. And these are various assumptions or steps for building the logistic regression, right? So we have seen these in detail. Only one outcome per event, like pass or fail. The outcomes are statistically independent. Relevant predictors has to be in the model. One category at a time means mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And sample sizes are larger than linear regression. Why? Because we don't have any transformation techniques over here like we used to have in linear regression. And these are various steps wherein how to go ahead and build a logistic regression model. Now in this example we have seen of simple logistic regression, where my x is essentially to be single. It can be continuous or discrete. If I have discrete x, then I have to create the dummy variables. How to create dummy variables we have already seen in our linear regression episodes, right? I have explained it in very much detail. Y is of course discrete in two categories. And the example we have seen for simple logistic regression was from the integration circuit manufacturing company in the last episode. These were the details given to us. Then we written the model, and we got some y value over here, which we have replaced it into the logit function, and this logit function has then given us the probability associated with the time taken, which was 40 in this particular example. And then we have concluded that the probability of a quality assurance person spending 40 minutes of time to detect an error is around 96.11%. Right? And then when we plot all those probabilities, then we get the logistic regression curve like this, and these are all the various probabilities for the inspection times which we have seen. And then we have concluded that the simple logistic regression model with one dependent variable and one independent variable, we have applied some rules and assumptions. The same rules applies to multiple logistic regression, right? So today what we will do is we will take an example of multiple logistic regression, and this is a business problem which we have to solve in today's session. Now, what is this business problem? So whenever we are dealing with writing a predictive modeling or dealing with predictive modeling or writing the models, etc., the number one thing to remember over here is to understand the business problem very, very well. If you don't understand the business problem, it will be very difficult to come to the decision that which model I should go ahead and build, right? Because there are a lot of different predictive models which we can go for, right? So based on the business problem, we choose which model we have to go for, right? So let us first understand this business problem. So the data set named over here is a claimant data set. Now what is claimant? So the terminology is also important to understand, right? So there is claimant, there is attorney, right? So age we can understand, anybody can understand. Sex means gender we can understand. Seat belt is one of the variable over here. Claimant insurance is one of the variable over here. Loss is one of the variable over here. So by looking at this terminology, we can say that this particular business problem is dealing with motor insurance. Now there is a motor insurance company, that is a general insurance company, okay, and they are having some data set wherein these are the variables they are having. The data set name, as I said, is claimant. Attorney is one variable, and this is the business problem which they are looking for. What they are saying is predict the outcome where the claimant is represented by an attorney or not on the following factors. Means claimant is nothing but the person who has taken the insurance policy from the company. Attorney is someone who is something like advocate, okay. So if suppose an insurance company is not giving the claims or not settling the claims for an accident policy for any claimant, then whether the claimant is going to represent the attorney in the court and going against the company or not. This is the business problem which is given to us. So we have to write a model wherein the model will predict based on these inputs, whether that particular claimant will hire an attorney against the company or not. This is a business problem in simple terms. Now, after understanding the business problem, what we have to understand is the data types of the variables, and first the variables itself. So age, gender are easy to understand. What is seatbelt? So here it is a claimant's age, here it is a claimant's sex, means the person who has taken the insurance policy from the company, which is claimant, whose age is given to us, his gender is given to us, and whether the claimant was wearing the seat belt. So the claimant who is sitting in the car, the person who has taken the policy from the company, who is sitting in the car and driving it, whether he was wearing the seat belt or not at the time when the accident happened. So 0 for yes and 1 for no, means he was wearing the seat belt. If he was wearing the seat belt, then the data given to us as 0, and if he wasn't wearing the seat belt, then the data for this particular variable, the value is given to us is 1. Whether the driver of the claimant vehicle was uninsured. Now here term is very important, uninsured. It is not insured, it is uninsured. So 0 if yes means 0 means uninsured. And 1 if no means insured. These things are very important to understand over here, right? So if you see now, after looking at this data, what we have understood is this is a discrete variable, and all these data types we have already discussed in our basic statistics sessions, right? So someone who is attending this for the first time and not able to understand what do you mean by discrete, continuous, etc., etc., then they have to, as I always say, that all my videos are in sequence, and even you watch any videos, data science you have to learn some initial part of it first, so that you can get the understanding of or the meaning of all these whatever the advanced level as we are going to or progressing towards, right? So these are all called as data types, and this we have already discussed in our basic statistics. So you can please watch the playlist, open the playlist for basic statistics, and go through all the lectures. All right, so this is a discrete variable. Age is obviously a continuous variable. Gender, claimant sex, is again a discrete in 2 categories. This is again a discrete in 2 class. Wearing the seat belt or not, again discrete with 2 class. Whether insured or not insured, the driver, discrete in 2 class. And loss, which is in numbers, in thousands, which is continuous. So all in all, we have 2 continuous variable, and rest of the variables, including our output variable, are all 2 class or 2 category variable. And obviously, as we know that whether the attorney will be hired or not is our output. This is we have to model, which means we have to go for logistic regression, because my output is having 2 categories in it, right? So let us go ahead and write a predictive model, logistic regression model for this business problem. So I have already written some code over here, right? Let me call in the data. So claimants is our data. If you see, these are the variables which we have just understood from the slide. except case number, these variables were given there, and case number is can be any random number. I mean, it doesn't have any value when it comes as far as prediction modeling is concerned, because these are some it's like serial numbers. Okay, so whether a person is having 66 number or 77 number, that person whether he will hire an attorney or not, so basically the hiring an attorney is not related to what case number he is having. Okay, so we are going to delete this particular column, and then we are going to keep all these input variables, and this is attorney is our output variable, and this is the data. This is the way the data has been given to us. So if you see, all four variables are having the values 0, 1, 0, 1 because they are discrete in two categories, and age and loss at the last two columns. If you see, there are some numbers over there, and because of that we have said that because age is obviously a continuous variable and loss is also a continuous variable. But while screening the data, you can see there are some NAs written over there. So the meaning of this is there are a lot of NAs, right? So the meaning of this is there is a lot of missing data in this particular data set. And whenever we solve a business problem, this is the first step we do, that we try to understand the data first, first the business problem, then try, after collecting the data, try to understand the data, their data types, whether there are missing values or not, whether the data is in proper format or not, whether the data types are in proper format or not, how many variables are there, how many observations are there. You can see here 1340 records are given to us. So there are 1340 such cases are available with us, which is a very good amount of data to write a predictive model as far as logistic regression is concerned. So let us understand now how many missing values are there. First we have to understand that, and then the data types of each and every variable. Because what we have understood, so obviously regression does understand the numerical values which we have said time and again. So all the values are in numerical format, but the thing is, at times there are some data types needs to be checked. Okay, so because there are various data types available in R and even in Python. Okay, so let's see first of all how many missing values are there. So to check that, I am saying I want summation of is.na, means if there is a NA value in the claimant's data set, then give me the total of that. That is the meaning of this line. So there are 290 missing values in this data set. Now one simple idea to go for the model building is, because how to handle these missing values. If there are missing values, you cannot write the model with this data. Even if you write, then there will be a lot of misinterpretation of the result, right? So we need to have the values over here. So one option which we have is to simply omit these NA values. Now if I want to omit this particular value, omit means drop this particular value, don't consider this value, then I have to drop the entire row, right? So meaning of this is, only because of one value I am missing on 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 different values. And data is very significant when it comes to data science, machine learning, writing predictive modeling, because data is something like nowadays it has become an oil, right? So we cannot simply omit the data. And let's check if suppose I omit it. So here I am saying that whenever you are finding NA in claimants, simply omit. Okay, so na dot omit from claimants, and give me a claimants 1, that is a new data set. Now if you see over here, the claimants 1 is having 1096 observations and 7 variables. Okay, this is the dimension of claimants 1. 1096 observation and 7 variables. So 1340 minus 1096 if I do, so I am missing almost 244 records, not values, I am talking about records. 244 multiplied by 5. So total 1220 cells I am missing. Okay, so which is dangerous to us. Okay, we cannot do this, we cannot take such decisions this is the simplest one, but we have more and more data to use while writing the modeling. So what is the second option? The second option is called as imputation. What do you mean by imputation? Imputation is simply meaning replacing these NA values with some logical values. So what can be the logical value? For example, if age is my column, let me minimize this. Then, because it is a continuous variable, I can go for, I can find out mean or median of this data, right? Discrete variable, we can go for a mode of the data, because mode we can apply on discrete data, and mean and median we can apply on continuous data, right? So if I find out the average of this entire age column and replace that average value with this NA value, then that is one solution. Or I can find out the median of this entire column and replace with that median value with this NA value, that is another solution to it, right? So these are called as replacing with the logical values. So now let us see first that how many values per column are missing over here. So let's say, if suppose I want to find out the missing values from the sex column, that is the claimant sex column, gender column, then there are 12 missing values in that column, which is this, right? If I try to find out the missing values from age column, you can see over here 189. So out of total 290 missing values, 189 are only from the age column. Now why I have to check this? Because if I want to find out a solution to imputation, so whether to go for mean imputation or median imputation can be judged from the number of missing values over there. So if there are more number of missing values, then we can go for median imputation, because if so many missing values are there, then average is going to be damaged, right? So I can either, but still I can either go for mean imputation or median imputation. Okay, now let us check whether there are any outliers or not, right? So 189 NAs are there which can be replaced by imputation, but then by which imputation? So as we have seen that median doesn't get affected with an outlier value. So I can check by plotting a box plot, are there any outlier values in the age, and how many outlier values are there? So as we have seen while learning the box plot, that from this we cannot judge that how many values are there, because this small circle tells us about, yes, there is an outlier value, but how many outliers are there, we don't know, we cannot say from this box plot, right? And because we want to go for imputation, we have to check the outliers, right? So how many outlier values are there can be find out by writing the dollar out to this box plot function, right? So if I execute this line of code, I have got a 95. What is this 95? Are these the number of outliers? No, these are not number of outliers. It tells me that there is only one outlier, and because this is a column age, which means there is someone who is having the age 95, which is an outlier value, right? So you can see over here age in 39, 36, 61. So there must be one value which is 95. So according to this data, that 95 value is an outlier value, and there are not many outliers, so we can go for mean imputation. If there are many outliers like 95, 93, 94, 97, 98, had we have such 8, 10, 12, 15, 25 outliers, then probably we could have gone for median imputation, right? So the decision is up to us, or one can even go for both type of imputation and write two different models, one with mean imputation and one with median imputation. That is also possible, right? Alright, so this is one way of looking at how many missing values are there, or you can simply execute the summary of the claimants, and here you can see how many NAs are there simply. So claimant X is having 12 NA values, claimant insurance is having 41, seatbelt 48, claimant age 189, and this summary tells us or gives us a lot of other information as well. For every column, what is the minimum value, what is the first quartile, what is the third quartile, median, what is the mean value, what is the maximum value, right? All these details can be understood from this summary. Now let us see the structure of the claimants, where we can get the data types and look at that. So case number is integer, attorney is again integer, claimant sex is integer, claimant insurance is integer, seatbelt is integer, claimant age is integer, and loss is number. These are the data types in which the data is actually stored in this data types format, right? Which means that we also need to change the data types for these 4 variables, because these are discrete variables, as we have understood. So the 0 and 1, though they are integers, but actually from our business problems perspective, this data should have been stored in different format, so that they could have represented as the labels or as the categories. Okay, right now these are not in the format of categories, these are simply numbers, right? So that we will look into later, but first let us do the first job, which is imputation. So let us impute the missing values, right? So age, we are going to replace it by 30. Why 30? Because if you see, where is age column? This is age column, and median is 30 for this age. So because it is having an outlier, though it is having only one outlier, I am just trying it with replacing all the missing values, that is those 189 missing values from age column will be replaced by 30. Okay, that is the meaning of this. So I am saying wherever you are having a claimant's dollar claimant age, means this is the column, if you are finding any value in that column, then simply replace that column's value where there is a NA by 30. This is the meaning of this line. And if you see now, all those values would have been replaced by 30. Look at this value, this is 30. So you will see a lot of 30s over here now. Look at this is 30, this is 30, and there are no more NA values, 30. Okay, So all those NA values have been replaced with 30, which was a median for this particular column. Now if you check how many missing values are there now, then there are 0. Earlier it was 189. So for this one, we can simply go and check the mean and median value for each column, right? How to do about the discrete data? So to find out the discrete data, we have to do the mode imputation. Okay, and what is mode? Mode is nothing but the highest number of occurrence of any value, right? Which means we have to check in the discrete data, we have to check that how many ones are there and how many zeros are there in this particular data set. So whichever value is having the highest number of occurrence, we are going to replace with that value all the NA values in that particular column, and that is called mode imputation. So to check whose occurrence is more in that particular column, there is a simple function called table, which is going to give me the number of ones are there in 6 column and number of zeros are there in 6 columns. So there are 586 zeros and 742 ones. So obviously this is more, so I am going to replace all the missing values from this particular column by 1. Same thing I am going to do about seat belt, because there are zeros which are having the maximum number of occurrence. I am going to replace it with 0. Same thing with insurance, claimant insurance, and I am going to replace it with 1 because it is having the highest occurrences over there. Now if you check that how many missing values are there in total in this particular data set, then there are 0, right? So all the missing values have been replaced. One job, one task has been done. The other thing is we have to remove the case number column because that is not having any significance in the prediction of attorney. So I am removing that first column and creating a claimant's final as a data set on which we have to work. So there is no case number column. All the missing values have been replaced, right? Now the last task with us is to see the data types, and that we have already seen the integer number, so we have to replace it. Why? Because if you see here in the summary, for age you can have median and mean. For loss you can have median and mean. How can you have median and mean for the discrete category variable? You must have mode for that, right? You should not have mean and median. So all these 4 variables are not in a proper data structure or data types. And because of that, what we have to do is we have to convert them into the factor. So factor is another function to convert them into the categorical variables. So if the data is given in such format, and if you want to convert it into the discrete format, you can use this function called factor. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this attorney's values in my claimant final, the 010101 values. Okay, I am going to factorize them and storing back into the attorney column. So let me do it and now show you the structure of it. So look at this. It has converted now with as factor with 2 labels as 0 and 1, and then 1 2 1 2 1 2 values it has been it has assigned. If you plot the summary now, you will see the attorney will be shown in this format. How many zeros are there and how many ones are there. Earlier it was not like that. Earlier attorney was showing us mean, median value, first quartile, third quartile, etc. Now it is showing only how many zeros are there, how many ones are there. So it has been converted into, or you can say factorized. Okay, it has been converted into the categorical variable. Similarly, we have to do it for claimant 6, insurance and seat belt. So let's do that one by one. So I am converting claimant 6, factorizing claimant 6, claimant insurance, seat belt, and now let's look at the structure. And you see over here all the first 4 variables have been converted or factorized with 2 levels. Age and loss is in numbers. Alright, now our cleaning, or what you can say, we call it as EDA. Whatever we have done till now is called as EDA, exploratory data analysis. Okay, in a large data set and in a very big business problem, in a real-time scenarios, many a times we have to spend at least 60 to 80% of our project total duration time into this EDA. That is cleaning, changing the data types, replacing the missing value, checking which replacement is doing good, etc., etc. All these things will come under this. Alright, now let us go ahead and build the models. Right? So for linear regression, we used this algorithm, that is linear model, LM. Right? For logistic regression, we use GLM. But what if I use linear regression model for a logistic regression problem, which means I'm using a claimant's final data set over here, and I'm saying I want to predict attorney tilde with these input variables, that is claimant sex, insurance, seatbelt, claimant age, loss, and giving the model name as fit1. And if you check the summary of fit1, you don't have any summary. You cannot write this model. Why? Because my attorney is a factored variable, categorical variable. Okay, so for any output categorical variable, I cannot use linear model. And even if I use it for the earlier data set, that is claimants, which was not factorized, okay, the claimants was not factorized, right? So if I write this model, attorney tilde dot means nothing but all the input variables, data claimants, then the model will be written, summary will be plotted, I'll get the coefficients, deviances, etc. I will get everything, right? Even if you go ahead and check the fitted values, I'm getting the values also. But here you can see there are some negative values, right? And my output, which I am trying to find out, is having only 2 classes, that is either it should be 0 or it should be 1. So I must get probability as an output is what we are expecting, right? And probability cannot be in negatives. Probability, we have seen in basic statistics, the value of probability always lie between 0 and 1, right? And because of this, we cannot use this linear model function algorithm to write a logistic regression model. So let us write a logistic regression model, which is also called a generalized linear model, right? So that is why it is GLM. So GLM attorney tilde dot, this is the syntax, family equal to binomial, because we are having 2 classes over there, and data is our claimant's final, which is a clean data, and everything we have, I mean process data, you can say, final data, right? So my model name is Logit, which has now written. If we check the summary of Logit, we get these details. So like we had linear regression summary, similarly we are getting logistic regression summary as well. So this is my formula, these are my deviances, residuals, or you can say errors. Then this is my beta naught, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, beta 4, beta 5, and all these are probabilities for those respective estimates or intercept and coefficients. And if you see over here, then this is significant, this is significant, this is significant, and this is significant. But this particular variable is not giving us a significant coefficient. So like in linear regression modeling, the option we were having was to transform this variable, but as we know in logistic regression we cannot apply such transformation, because the values we are having in the seat belts are nothing but 0 and 1. what type of transformation you can apply, right? And that is why the only option we left with, when any variable is not becoming a significant variable, then the only option we left with is to drop the variable. And that is why more number of observations and data points or even the columns are required when it comes to deal with the categorical business problem, right? So one decision from this we have made is to drop the seatbelt column. Now let us understand few more parameters over here and few more observations we have to make, that the coefficients we have got for this particular column, claimant sex, is showing us with this claimant sex 1. What is 1? The interpretation of this is this particular coefficient is for the category 1, the class 1 in the claimant sex, so the coefficient is for this one, right? Or you can say this much amount of change can happen if we change this. This is the interpretation of this, right? Similarly, we are getting it for again class 1, again class 1. So always we will get the intercepts, the coefficients for categorical variable with class 1. And that is why I said while explaining the theory that whenever we get the probability as an output, that probability is always associated with the class 1, right? So we will understand that. Okay, this is one observation we have made. The another observation is here we are not getting the R square or multiple R square or adjusted R square values, right? Here what we are getting is the deviances, and there are two types of deviances. One is null deviance, one is residual deviance. Now the interpretation of this null deviance is nothing but it is for the baseline model wherein y is equal to beta naught. So if we have a y, if we put y equal to beta naught, which is this, then this is the deviance we are going to get in our output. And residual deviance is nothing but it is for actual model, which is our this model, that is y equal to beta naught plus beta 1 x1 beta 2 x2 etc etc. So the thumb rule over here is we shall always have null deviance greater than residual deviance, then only we can say our model is good. So in this case you can see here our null deviance is greater than our residual deviance, which means our model is good. The only thing is that we have to remove the seatbelt column over here. Now there is one more thing to learn, and something that is called as AIC value, which is Akaike information criteria, and this is over here. So it is to check which model is better. So this value has got significance only when we have to compare two different models, something like our RMSE in linear regression model. If I want to say that this model is better than this, then I will say that which is having a lesser RMSE, similarly which is having a lesser AIC, that is my good model. So while comparing two different models, I will use AIC. Alright, so now once we have these coefficients ready with us, and if I want to write an equation, then how my equation will be now? This is going to be my equation, right? So the y value which I am going to get, which is further replaced in that probability or logit equation, that is p equal to e to the power y divided by 1 plus e to the power y. Okay, to get this y value, I will use these coefficients and their respective variables. Okay, and once I solve this equation, I will get some y value. That y value will be replaced over there, and I will get the probability value. So let us check that with one example. But before that, what we will do is we will remove the seatbelt column. Rest of the things I am keeping as it is. I am writing another model and I am getting another summary of this model, and you can see here now this AIC value has been reduced from this one. Okay, so this model is better than that earlier model. where seatbelt is not there and all remaining variables, whatever the coefficients we are getting for the variables are significant over here, right? Of course, null deviance is again greater than residual deviance. So this is a better model than the earlier one, right? Now this is going to be my equation for this particular model. You can see here minus 0.164927 0.323755 into Clements X, right? So this equation is ready now. Now let us take an example. Suppose a new entry with all these inputs is coming, and I want to predict the output for this one, that is whether this female whose driver is not insured, yes means what is it? Uninsured, right? Whose driver is not insured and whose age is 20, age is the third column, right? Yes, age, and loss is suppose $10. Now if this entry is coming up and if I replace these values in this equation, then my equation becomes like this: minus 0.16, which is my beta naught, plus 0.32, of course I have truncated these numbers to 2 digits, plus 0.32 multiplied by 1 plus 0 plus 0.006 into 20 minus 0.32 into 10. Right? Then I'm going to get this value, and this is going to be my y value. Now if I replace this y into our probability equation, which is this, right, then this is the probability we are getting. What is the value for P? 0.05%, which means the female whose driver is uninsured, who is having her age as 20 and her losses are $10, if I put these values in this model, then the output, what I'm going to get as probability to check whether that particular female will hire an attorney or not, the chances that she will, now again we have to check 0 for yes and 1 for no, right? And what we have said, that the probability is always associated with class 1, which means what is my class 1 over here? It is she is not going to hire an attorney, means there is 0.5% chance, not 5% chance, or you can say even 5% chance, there is 5% chance that the female whose driver is uninsured, having age 20 and $10 losses, there is 5% chance that this female is not going to hire an attorney. The meaning of this is there is 95% chance that she will hire an attorney. This is the interpretation, right? So now once this model is ready, what we can do is we can check the fitted values. Fitted values are nothing but if I applied the same input data to my model, then what outcomes it is giving for my existing values. So these are the existing values, right? And these are my predicted values for the same data on which I have written the model, and because of that it is called as fitted values. So I am getting and storing all those probabilities or if you see these probabilities now, so these are the probabilities for all the historical data. Meaning, if you see over here, 2.507536 e to the power minus 05, which means it is 0.00. So what is, how you will interpret this one? Let me write. So here what we are saying is the interpretation of that. Okay, let me change the color. Let us put it black. So the interpretation of that is 0.0002507 536. This is the probability, or this is the chance that this particular candidate is not going to hire an attorney, right? So for not going to hire an attorney, what is the class 1 over here? Okay, let me remove this. So not going to hire an attorney is class 1. So this is the probability associated with class 1. So this is the chance that that first observation input or the candidate is not going to hire an attorney, means 1 minus this will be the chance, that is almost 99 point some percent, that that person is going to hire an attorney, which is associated with 0. So if you see the output, it is saying over here is 0. Okay, and what is my original value? It is 0, which means my model has fitted this particular observations correctly. Similarly for this one, there is 0.49%. 0.49 means 49% chance that the person is not going to hire an attorney, meaning there is 51% chance that the person is going to hire an attorney. So this is a wrong interpretation, or wrong fitted value, which we have got over here. Okay, for this one, if you see, it is 57% chance that the person is not going to hire an attorney, means 43% chance that the person is going to hire an attorney. So again here it should have been 0, but original value is 1 and the predicted value is 0. So here again there is a misclassification, which means the error or wrong prediction. Similarly, for all the values, we have some correct predictions and some wrong classifications, wrong predictions. How to check that? How to check that? So let us see how to check that now. Right? So I can get these probabilities as directly with Logit1 dollar fitted values. Logit1 is nothing but our model name, right? Similarly, I can even use the predict function, give my model name, give the type C as a response, okay, and give the data set and get the probabilities. If I write this in this way and check the probabilities, I am getting the same probabilities as an output, because these are predictions now. So if we split the data into train and test, right? So the data which is in the training set, we use it for model building purpose, and the data in the test data set we use for the validation purpose. So whenever test data has to be validated, we can use the predict function, right? So here I have not splitted the data into train and test. I am giving the entire original data on which my model has been built it. Okay, so the results will be similar. So if you see, check the thousands observation is having this value 6.063975 e to the power minus 01, and this value, if you check earlier for a thousand variable observation, 6.063975 e to the power minus 01. So let me copy this value. So I am getting the same probabilities even if I use the fitted values argument for the model or use the predict function, the output will be same. Alright, so now as I said that obviously we are going to get some correct results and some misclassifications we call it as, or errors we call it as. Errors, normally we tend to use the terminology in linear regression sort of things. Here also these are errors only, but the proper word is misclassification, because we are classifying, we are trying to classify the output over here into zeros and ones, right? So to check how many are correct and how many are wrong classifications we have got with our model, what we can do is we can have a table, the proportion. But then how to check it? So the important terminology over here is the cutoff. Where to put the cutoff? As I said, when we get all the probabilities available with us like this, then we need to find out the cutoff, and the default cutoff was 0.5. So anything above 0.5 will be classified as 1. Anything below 0.5 will be classified as 0, right? And that when I plot that table to get the classification, okay, that is called confusion matrix. Basically that is called confusion matrix. So in confusion matrix, what we always have is we have some correct results which are called as true positives and true negatives, and we have some wrong results which are called as false positive and false negative. Now to understand this confusion matrix, which is very, very important concept as far as classification is concerned, or predictive modeling for classification is concerned, let us take a case study that if suppose we want to find out or identify the person, suppose we are having, let us say the person who is having a cancer and the person who is having not having a cancer, and the person who is having a cancer and the person who is not having a cancer. Now this data which I am having is the actual one, or maybe predicted class. Suppose this is a predicted class and this is my actual class, which means the person who is actually having, so if you have followed the hypothesis testing the lecture which I have created, or the video which I have created, in that I have taken this example. Okay, so actually a person is having a cancer and my model has predicted that he is having a cancer, which is my correct result. Actually the person is not having a cancer and my model has predicted yes, the person is not having the cancer, then it is a correct prediction. But what if The person who is having a cancer and model is predicting that you are not having a cancer, then it is an error. And the person who is not having a cancer and the model is predicting that you are having a cancer, that is again an error. Now what we have to identify over here is which error is my alpha and which error is my beta, because alpha is going to be dangerous one. So the person who is having a cancer, if the model is predicting that you are not having a cancer, means person is going back home and enjoying his life and finally dying, right? Which means this is going to be my alpha error. And the person who is not having a cancer, if the model predicts that you are having a cancer, means the person will frighten and probably go and do some another check at some another institute or laboratory, and then he will find out eventually that he is not having a cancer, and that is why this error is not that significant, which is why it is called as beta error. So alpha error is more significant, so Fn is more significant, false negative is more significant, and that is why our objective should be always to reduce Fn. Our objective while choosing the cutoff value and writing the model, we should choose such a cutoff, or we should write such a model which is giving me a lesser false negative. Now let us understand what is true positive. Patient with disease is told that he or she is having a disease. What is true negative? Patient with no disease is told that he or she does not have the disease. So these are all correct predictions. Told means told by model. What is false negative? Patient with disease is told that he or she is not having the disease. That is false negative, which is my alpha over here. And what is false positive? Patient with no disease is told that he or she is having a disease, which is my beta error. So if I want to find out the error rate over here, so my overall error rate will be my Fn, which is this one, plus my Fp divided by the entire matrix, Tp plus Fn plus Fp plus Tn. Or we can also do it in a reverse way. If I want to find out the correct prediction rate, then I can do Tp plus Tn divided by the entire matrix, which is also called as accuracy. This is the formula for accuracy. So either I can go for this formula to calculate the accuracy, or I can calculate the accuracy with 1 minus overall error rate. 1 minus error is my accuracy, and my accuracy should be always greater than percentage of a majority class. So when we say majority class, means we are talking about majority class in the historical data. Majority class in the historical data. So after calculating the accuracy for any model, what I have to check is I have to check the proportion of the majority class in the historical data, and if that accuracy which we have calculated from the model is greater than this majority percentage, then our model is good. This is one parameter to decide the model. Now apart from this confusion matrix, there are some other measurements which are very significant. One is called as precision. What is precision? Precision is nothing but probability of correctly identifying a random patient with disease as having a disease. That is my precision, and that is why it is Tp divided by Tp plus Fp. What is sensitivity, or it is also called as recall or hit rate or true positive rate, which is very, very important, TPR. Right? So you will get the TPR with this formula. It is saying that proportion of people with disease who are correctly identified as having a disease. So that is why it is true positive rate, which is very important. This parameter is very important, TPR. What is specificity? True negative rate. That is proportion of people with no disease being characterized as not having disease. That is my true negative rate. And what is another important parameter is FPR. That is false positive rate, which is my alpha. Type 1 error, it should be reduced, and this FPR we can calculate by using this formula, 1 minus specificity, that is true negative rate. So when we do 1 minus true negative rate, specificity, we get FPR. So these are the two important parameters when it comes to logistic regression. Of course, all other things are important only, but these are very much important to decide or to choose the cutoff point. And this cutoff point I can get from ROC curve. ROC is nothing but receiver operating characteristic. Okay, the history behind this ROC curve, I mean, people have started plotting this, is from World War II. To differentiate between the true signals and false alarm, that time one group of countries have developed this ROC, which is plotted between, as I said, two important parameters, and that is true positive rate and false positive rate, TPR and FPR. So as we know that false positive rate is nothing but my alpha error, so it has to be reduced. So I have to keep it minimum, and my true positive rate has to be maximum. So if I want to choose a cutoff point, I should choose a cutoff point in such a way which is having the higher true positive rate and lower false positive rate. So if you can see from here, if I get this red dotted line like this as a classifier or as a ROC curve after writing a model, then that is called a perfect classifier. This blue line is telling us about the test classifier, and here this black dotted line is talking about the classifier with no predictive value. So we should not get such a line. We should get lines like this. You can also get it like this. You can also get it like this. So while choosing the cutoff value, what we have to do is we have to choose such a point. You can draw a tangent on these curves, and on that tangent you have to choose that point which is closer to this point. That is going to be your identical cutoff point. So we have to choose the cutoff point in such a way which maximizes the true positive and minimizes the false negative or false positive rate. Not false negative, false positive rate, FPR. And there is something more to this ROC curve you can come up with. It's called as the area under the curve, which means once we plot this curve, suppose this is my curve which is given by my model, then the area under this curve is very significant parameter to decide whether my model is good or bad, which is called as AUC, area under the curve. So that area, if suppose it is between 0.9 and 1.0, then my model is outstanding. If that area is between 0.8 and 0.9, then I am having an excellent or good model. If that area is between 0.7 and 0.8, then the model may be acceptable or fair model. If the area is 0.6 or 0.7 in between, then it is a poor model. And if the area is 0.5 to 0.6, which means it is a no discrimination model, which is it has no value, it cannot classify, right? So these are the two important parameters when it comes to logistic regression which we have to go for, that is confusion matrix and ROC curve, plotting an ROC curve and calculating the area under the curve. So let us check that. Now while writing this model for this problem, okay, if I want to plot the confusion matrix, then what I can do is I will use the table function again. Here I am saying that whatever probabilities my model has calculated, okay, so take greater than 0.50, because this is the default cutoff I am going to use, and plot it versus the original classification in the data. Okay, so we will get a table, and this table is our confusion matrix. The meaning of this is the false and true is our predicted classes and 0 and 1 is our actual classes. So the values in the vertical column is the total. So if suppose I plot the original, that is, this is claimant's final data set, $attorney. Okay, if this proportion, if I plot it over here, then originally I am having 685 zeros in the data set, which is this. Okay, attorney column is having 685 zeros and 655 ones, right? So if you total this 434 plus 251, then you get 685. If you total this 148 plus 507, you get 655, right? So originally we are having this many zeros and this many ones, but my model has predicted this many zeros and this many ones, this many zeros and this many ones, and that is why it is called as confusion matrix. So this is going to be my true positive, this is going to be my true negative, false positive, this is going to be my false negative, and this is, this is, I have plotted it in a reverse order, right? So here it is a predicted class and here it is a actual class, right? So I am getting TP and TN as it is. So this is going to be my true positive and true negative, which are my correct predictions, and these are my wrong predictions, right? So 251 is going to be my false negative. Why? Because here I have taken predicted values on rows and actual values on columns. Actual values are on columns and predicted values are on rows, and that is why my Fn and Fp are going to interchange, and because of that 251 is my Fn value and 148 is my Tn value, Fp value, right? So these are the misclassifications we have done, our model has done, and these are the correct classification our model has done. Now if I change that cutoff value to a different cutoff value, how to change? So before that I have to plot, okay, and before that let me calculate the accuracy. So if I want to calculate the accuracy for this confusion, okay, then the formula is summation of DIAG, means diagonal of the confusion. So this is going to be the diagonal of the confusion, which means 434 plus 507. Okay, so this is this plus this divided by the entire confusion, summation of confusion. So if I say simply summation of diagonal of confusion, then you can, let me get this. Okay, I cannot take it like this. Okay, so okay, so this is diagonal of confusion, that is 434 and 507. So I am taking a summation of that, these two values, and I am taking the summation of entire confusion. Okay, so correct predictions divided by entire this thing confusion, right? So TP plus TN divided by TP plus FN plus FP plus TN is going to be my accuracy. So let us calculate the accuracy now. So the accuracy of my model is 70.22%. So error is 1 minus accuracy, which is 29%. So my model currently, which I have built it, is 70% accurate with this cutoff value, because this cutoff value I have used to get the confusion and use that confusion to calculate the accuracy, right? So now if I want to change the cutoff value, and let us first complete this one. So here the accuracy should be greater than percentage of majority class. So let us check what is the majority class. So what is the proportion of my original attorney column? 51% is 0 and 48% is 1, right? So what is the proportion of greater than 0.5? So 43% and 56%, right? So which means this class 1 values are having more percentage than my majority class in the original data. Okay, and that is why this model is also working good. Now let us plot the ROC curve. So for that there is a package called ROCR. I am calling the library ROCR because the package is already installed in my machine. Then there is a function called prediction. I simply have to pass on the probability values which I have stored in this prob variable, and then give the original output variable from the data set to get the ROCR predictions. And these ROCR predictions I am using with respect to TPR and FPR value to calculate TPR and FPR value by using the performance function. So I am going to get the performance which I am storing it into this ROCR performance. If you want to have the help on this performance function, you can simply use the question mark and say performance, right? Now if you want to see the structure of this ROCR performance, it gives me what is the x-axis name, y-axis name, because I'm going to plot this ROCR curve. Okay, so my x-axis is false positive rate, my y-axis is true positive rate, right? And my alpha name is the cutoff. Then these are my x values, these are my y values, and these are my alpha values. Alpha values are nothing but our cutoff value. So let us plot the ROCR curve, and once the ROCR curve is ready, you can see over here, this is the ROCR curve. So x-axis is false positive rate, y-axis is true positive rate, and all these 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, etc., etc. are nothing but my cutoff values. So what I have to choose is, I have to choose such a value which is closer from this point. So obviously this must be lying somewhere between 0.5 and 0.6. Okay, so if I want to draw a tangent over here somewhere, I will get one point over here. Okay, but this is all subjective. Why? Because if I change the shape of the curve, you might find that the point now gone closer to 0.6, so instead of 0.5, right? So this is subjective, but this is just to get an idea, okay, probably where it is lying. So the idea we have got that it is lying between 0.5 and 0.6, and because of that, what I am going to do is, I am going to create a data frame, okay, of all these cutoff values with their respect to FPR and TPR values, and storing it into the data frame, which is look like this. So this is quite awkward over here, so let me clean it, give the column names to the data frame, and use the round function so that it will be rounded, right? So now you can see over here, these are the values, okay, and in this, these are FPR, these are TPR, and these are cutoff values. Now, as we have discussed that while choosing the cutoff value, we have to maximize the true positive rate and minimize the false positive rate, which means I want to choose such a cutoff value from this where I will have a higher TPR and lower FPR. Okay, so what I can do is I can rearrange this data in a reverse format, because I want to check the higher values for TPR. So scrolling down, while scrolling down, I want to check it that way, and just to learn a different package over here. So dplyr is another package where the arrange function is there. So I'm arranging the TPRs in the descending order, and I'm getting the cutoff values, right? So now you can straight away go down to between 0.5 and 0.6, and you will see you have to check such a value wherein you have the higher TPR and lower FPR, right? So you may see the TPR is 0.7, 0.76, and you are getting 0.33 FPR, almost 32 and 75, 31 and 73, which is not bad. Okay, so something like this we have to check for it. Okay, and then we can use that cutoff into our earlier confusion now. So if I use it in this way, suppose let us say I use 0.56 as the cutoff value, and I plot the confusion 1 over here. So now this is my confusion 1, and this was our earlier confusion. So now look at over here, my correct predictions 485 plus 460. Earlier they were 434 plus 507. My wrong predictions are 200 and 195. Earlier they were 148 and 251. And now you see over here, I have taken the predicted values on columns and the actual values on rows, whereas earlier they were actual values were on columns and the predicted values were on rows. So if you change this probability greater than 5.0 or this x and y values, interchange it, the confusion interchanges, and that the reason why it is called as confusion matrix, because it is really confusing. So one has to really focus while understanding the results, right? And then only you can interpret it. Okay, so let us check now the AUC, right? So the package for that is PROC, and the library is PROC I am importing. I am using performance function again, where I am passing these ROCR predictions, and I am saying measure is AUC, area under the curve. So let us see what is the area under the curve we have got. We have got it almost 76%. So for the, and this is for the first confusion, not for the next one. Okay, I have not worked on that. I mean, you can simply do it. But then for the first confusion, what was the accuracy we have got? The accuracy we have got was, where is that? 70.22%. This was the accuracy, and this is the area under the curve we have got. Now let us go and check. So between 0.7 and 0.8 is acceptable or fair model as far as area under curve is concerned, and accuracy is 70%, which is again good. And the third parameter which we have seen, that the accuracy should be greater than the percentage of the majority class, and the percentage of majority class was 51%, right? So on all three parameters the model is working fine, and hence we can uh, deploy this model and check with 70% accuracy. Keep collecting the new data points in the time to come. Include that data in this model. Rerun the model, redeploy it, check it again whether your accuracy is increasing, and it becomes the continuous process. And this is one approach or one way, right? You can do a lot of different things over here. Okay, because of the limitation of time, I would say that we can stop over here as far as this particular model is concerned. But then, yes, I mean, in a learning curve, there are different approaches we can take. Now, here, while imputing the numbers, we have taken the median for this one. Okay, if you take the mean over here, the results may vary. So this is how we have to continuously try and check. Okay, or you can even use, while for imputation, there is another technique called regression imputation. Okay, so you can predict the age by using the linear regression. Okay, get those values, predicted values, put it over here or replace these values in this, and then apply a logistic regression. That is also a possible thing. So there are a lot of different things and methods and techniques which we can use to model any business problem. So there is no end to it, right? So that's it for the day, guys. Thank you very much for joining today's session. If you have liked it, then please like this video, and if you have not subscribed, then subscribe the channel so that all the upcoming regular videos, learning videos which I am going to upload, you will also get the benefit to listen to them and watch to them. And of course, if you have not liked the Facebook page, please do it, so that that is another medium to connect with me. If you are not linked with me on LinkedIn, then please try to do that, so that these are the various methods, mediums through which we can be connected. If you have any queries, questions, you can directly write into the comment section, and try to share it as much as possible with your friends and colleagues and those who are interested in such videos in data science, in machine learning, right? And again, there is, as I said in the beginning, that there is a good news that we are starting a new batch from 5th of November, that is on coming Saturday next week. Thank you very much for joining. Bye bye, see you, take care, all the best.